Thanks for tuning into today's podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our new remote training here at RPP. We've been offering remote training for quite some time, but we always required the athlete to come in-house for an assessment. Now we can do the whole assessment online and bring all of our services, pitching, hitting, and strength training to your doorstep. So, if you like what we do and how we do it, go to our website at rocklandpeakperformance.com and click on Remote Training in the toolbar. Thanks. The Behind the Scenes podcast. I'm your host, Nunzio Signore, looking to bring you great dialogue with some of the best in the world of player development. The world of training baseball players has changed dramatically during the past few years, and I'm looking forward to shedding some light here on what's the latest, what's the best, and what's really happening in the world of player development. Thanks for joining me for the ride. Hey, today we're going to sit down and talk with TCU's Zach Dechant about some of the challenges that college athletes and coaches themselves face day in and day out during the college baseball season, as well as what's to be expected from these young athletes upon entering a Division I program. Zach has been in place since 2008 at Texas Christian University and is the current assistant athletic director of human performance there. He also handles the development and implementation of TCU sports performance internship programs that has been in place for over 15 years. During the baseball offseason, he also trains many young athletes as well as major league and minor league players as well. He's the author of the book Movement Over Maxes and recently a new dad. Today, we're going to sit down and talk with Zach Dechant. Hey, Zach, first off, congratulations on being a dad and welcome to the world of parenting.
Yeah, it's honestly the best thing that has ever happened to me. It's amazing.
It is, man. I always tell guys that have kids for the first time, I'm like, you're officially a man. It's like you have something bigger to live for now.
You're absolutely right. And I was telling one of my best friends is the coach here at Texas A&M. He's the strength coach for men's basketball, and I was telling him last night in the car because I haven't seen him since I had my son, I guess. And you can't explain to people that don't have kids yet what it is to have a child. He has kids. He's got a 12 and a 14-year-old. And I was like, man, I never knew when you tried to tell me how amazing it was. I never knew what you were talking about. You just can't get that feeling.
And what really happened for me, my daughter's 21 years old. So, but when my daughter was born, it's really, really, really easy to weed the BS out of your life because you really there's so much more time you need to spend for something else that now you actually do have to thin out your day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. So, you become so much more efficient because I devote my day to him. It's built around him now. That's
it's great.
And so whatever else happens that I don't need in my life is gone.
Yeah, and you're immediately going to become a better person. You're going to immediately become a better person. So tell us a little bit about your path previous to TCU. How did this all start for you?
Yeah, so I actually, I am really self-taught. I went to a school of 70 people in the entire high school. My town had 300 people. We didn't have a weight room. I knew I wanted to be a college athlete, and to do that, it was going to take development. So I built or bought my own weight set when I was 13 or 14 years old as a freshman and started reading everything I could get my hands on. From there, I went and played college football, and I chose our school. I chose my path because of the strength coach. He was well known. He was involved with Westside at the time, which was very, very popular. I had studied a bunch of Westside stuff, and it was a great fit. I GA'd for him later there at Missouri State, went on to the Anaheim Angels for a couple of years as a strength coach, and found myself in a baseball and football role at TCU for really the last 15 years. So
when we were speaking at Palooza, I said, "So did you play baseball in college?" And you said, "No, I played football." And we were driving in my car, and I was like, I said, "Football?" Like I didn't expect that, you know. But it's the same as me. My background was soccer, and I didn't play baseball. But you may have played baseball, but I didn't even play baseball. Like I played soccer. You know.
And it goes to show you that you don't necessarily have to do the sport to be really, really good at helping others develop in it. Mike Boyle talks about that all the time.
And so does, I remember I was speaking with Eric Cressy one time, and he told me that he thinks that it's actually an advantage because when you decide you're going to train overhead athletes and baseball players, being a soccer player or being a football player, all the more reason, while all the other guys that played baseball think that because they played baseball they know how to do it, they
Yeah.
just sit on the bench and kind of like go from game to game, and they never ever really try to up their game and figure out how to actually train these guys, where you and I had to actually sit down and actually learn about the shoulder, learn about how overhead athletes transfer energy. And we actually had to, we had to constantly read about it. So while these guys were playing baseball, true, they have the real world application. But as far as reading about actually training, I think a lot of those guys think that, playing baseball gives you the free ride in.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting point. And the one thing I am very grateful for, because I didn't play baseball, I didn't walk into the training environment and professional baseball with all these preconceived notions of, well, you have to run 45 minutes after your start, and then the next day you're going to run poles.
Exactly.
And like a lot of people do, I came in with really a track and field and a football background, and I trained athletes to develop them as athletes and around principles that I would use anywhere, not in baseball. And so I was viewed very, very outside the box by all the coaches with the Anaheim Angels at the time, because we were doing tempo runs, we were doing max speed work. I wanted to do acceleration work. And that stuff was really not present 15 and 20 years ago in baseball, if you want the truth.
Right. And then after that, you were at Missouri State, right?
So that was actually before. I was a GA athlete and a GA at the Missouri State before I was with the Angels. Yep. After the Angels, I went to the University of Wyoming for a short stint with football, and then came to TCU.
Great. Many schools hold gym hours for baseball players early in the morning. What are your thoughts on this? And do you find a big difference in performance in the weight room during heavy workloads such as finals? So between the early morning not getting enough sleep and heavy workloads as finals, how do you accommodate for stress and auto-regulation?
Yeah. So this is a very, very difficult question, because for the previous 14 years, our team trained at 6:45 or 7 a.m. Every training session was held at that time because of necessity. We've got 22 sports, 560 some athletes at TCU, and everybody trains out of one weight room. And we had no choice. You're practicing in the afternoon from 2 or 2:30 to maybe 5:30. Post practice, it's really not an option. The last thing you want to do is bring these guys in super fatigued from being at the field for 5 or 6 hours without anything to eat. They've still got study hall hours after that. So out of necessity, we had to train early in the morning. Fortunately, and this is what we just talked about, I had a son. We had a football staff transition, and I was forced to find time in the afternoon for our baseball athletes. We had to move practice back. And it has been the biggest blessing in the 15 years that I've been at TCU. I never wanted to do it early. We never want to do it early. It's just we had to. We had no other choice. And the athletes love it. The injury rates, from what we've seen, have gone down. There's more energy all the way around. It's better for everybody.
So when you get an athlete in the weight room, and you can see that the guy is fatigued, how do you regulate that, and how do you? Because I know a lot of these guys aren't going to tell you that they're tired. They're going to try to actually just, they're going to try to pull the same weight that they were pulling last week when they weren't tired. Is there any way that you kind of gauge that other than just looking at them?
Yeah. So to me, the most important thing for all young coaches to learn is get to know your athletes. Talk to them. You can, as soon as they walk in the door, we're asking them, how do you feel? What's going on? How's your body feel? How'd you sleep last night? Just talk to your athletes and get to know them, because once they trust you, they'll give you that information. So that's number one. The second thing is, during the year, we take RPE, subjective, RPE scores based on how they feel. So we'll track those. But again, it all goes back to, you can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their how they talk, how their body language is when they walk in the door, how they act in the warm-up. You can see all this stuff, whether a guy's fatigued or not. And then once we actually get into the training session, our in-season program is really 100% built around auto-regulation for all of our starters, in that we auto-regulate the intensity, the volume, as well as the exercises if they want it. So the intensities, we have heavy and light options for them. You know, take a trap bar deadlift or a front squat. They've got a heavy and a light option. If you're really fatigued, you're going to perform the light option. Some of our advanced guys will be on VBT, and those guys have to stay in a specific
There's the
range.
answer I was waiting for. Dun, 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 dun.
Right. So
Okay.
all of our tier one starters, yes, are on VBT, and it's auto-regulated based on the speed. If you're moving it super fast, we're going to add more weight because you're fresh, you're feeling good. If it's moving super slow, we're going to take weight off so that you get in that range. Intensity is modified. They have the choice of volume, so we might give them 3 to 6 sets as a range and say, you know, you're not feeling well today. You're going to do 3 sets on your main lift, 2 sets on all accessories, and you're out the door. Oh, this guy's feeling really, really good. Coach, can I do all 6 sets on my main lift and 4 sets on the accessories? Absolutely. So they have their choice. And then if we've got a guy that's really banged up and needs an exercise modification or something like that, they have their choice sometimes of an exercise modification. So all of our guys that are playing a ton have they have control of their own workout, so to speak. So they have investment in it as well.
Yeah, I know that you're one of the few guys that I know in the strength and conditioning setting in college or even in the private sector that use VBT. And I know once in a while that can be a headache sometimes getting them to sync up and getting them to connect. But even more than anything else that I like VBT about, I like it because of the auto regulation. And I use it with my guys because a lot of my guys will tell me, no, man, that's not too heavy. And I'm like, well, if it's not too heavy, how come you're not making the speed? You know, just make the speed and I'll buy that. You know what I mean? And if they can't make the speed, they need to take it down. And I just think that's a really great thing. So I'm glad that amongst all the other methods that you use, VBT was one of them. That's great.
Yeah. You know,
Good.
I'm sorry, Nuzio, go ahead.
Okay, if you want to expand upon that, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say we put accelerometers or VBT units on everybody from top down. You know, not just our starters use it, but the starters are really the only ones that are auto regulated. We want to drive intent with our younger athletes so that they understand how to move a bar fast,
Exactly.
so that we can gain power from that. So everybody uses VBT. It's
For different reasons.
We opt to workout. That's really where exactly.
Awesome. So the NCAA has a number of rules on student athletes' participation in sports related to activities during the school year. Can you discuss how you navigate this to optimize performance?
Yeah, it's not that easy sometimes, but
I know.
really what I found as I've gotten older is less is more. That's my answer is we do less than we do more anymore. When I first came into TCU, and really I shouldn't say first, until COVID hit, we were a high-low program 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. We would have the guys come in on their own for optional work on Tuesdays and Thursdays where they did, you know, their individual recovery stuff. They did anything we found in their movement screen that would happen on those days, but we had to make a lot of those things optional. And once COVID hit, we moved to a 4-day split, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but it's really a 2-day split. Tuesdays and Fridays are our high days where we sprint fast, we jump, we throw, and we do something lower body. That's our heavy lower body days. Mondays and Thursdays are really just quick stem days and or recovery days where they touch a little bit of upper body stuff. They'll come in and do some extensive plyos. We might do a little bit of acceleration work or something just to get the body going a bit. But since COVID, we have really cut back on the time that we've spent in the gym. And I've never, ever been happier with it. I don't know if I'll ever go back.
I think that a lot of times, like I see it now, we're starting our summer program and I see it now. I mean, guys love it here. They like the culture, but I mean, sometimes you're here 3.5 hours. I'm like, guys, do you have a job or do you need to make money or do you have a girlfriend or something? Because 3.5 hours in this place is like a long time,
Right.
You know,
it is.
Including your throwing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 Addition by subtraction.
Yeah. And the thing is what so many people forget is that we spend a ton of time on the field. Practices are intense. And so you have to make room in the glass of water for that, right? If your glass is stressed, you're pouring water in, you can't overfill the cup. So you have to make room for practices and individual work and skill hours and all that stuff that goes on over there. And that's why I found that less is just going to be more for us.
Awesome. What are the expectations you like to see in a new recruit upon entering the weight room, movement wise and load wise, when they first come to your program?
Yeah. So we really want our athletes to be able to move well. We want them to know the main lifts, which is, your bilateral lifts, whether it's a front squat, back squat, a trap bar deadlift. We want them to know our squat pattern, a hinge pattern, upper body push and pull, so they know how to move their scaps. And we want them to be able to stabilize their trunk. I talk about this in movement over maxes. That's our big 5 patterns that everything branches off into more advancement in our system based on those big 5 patterns. And it's not just limited to the weight room. We want our athletes to come in knowing how to jump, knowing how to sprint. All those patterns are vital. And the faster you can move through those patterns, or the faster you've learned those patterns coming in, the faster we can advance you off into the stuff that we've been talking about, whether it's power development with BBT, or it's our super maximal eccentric stuff in the off season. So as far as load wise, I'm not so much worried about load, because the load really takes care of itself if the athletes have been training previously.
Right.
If they've been with somebody like yourself and trained, they're going to be strong. They're going to be able to handle load, and we're going to get them stronger as well. It's the kids that have never done anything, that don't know how to move, that don't know how to hinge squat, any of
Right.
these things, that you're
Right.
starting off with 95 pounds on a barbell as a freshman. And now
Yeah.
you're chasing development for the next 3 years because you're behind everybody coming in.
Yeah, they're lacking that pelvic stability they're shooting a cannon from a canoe. They're really not, they're
Absolutely.
not able to, they're not able to apply load to it's like, I tell my guys all the time, listen, man, you're throwing a baseball from off a raft right now. How you can't really throw hard when you're on a raft. You need to be on concrete. And that's basically, what you're talking about with their pelvic development and their hips. I explain to my guys also, maybe you can back me up on this, or you can disagree with me if you want. I tell guys, listen, I can't tell you how many calls I get from strength coaches and from pitching coaches, especially, and baseball coaches in D1 programs, from my guys who go there their first year. And because they've been with me since they're like 15 or 16 years old and they've developed a good movement pattern, they immediately become a leader on the team in the weight room. They use them as examples. And I'll get coaches call me up and going, dude, Joe he kills it in the weight room. He's really became like a presence in the weight room. Can you talk about that? When you see a kid come in who's really got a good movement process, how does he transfer with relating to the older upperclassmen? Does that help him? Does that give him an advantage in some sort of a way?
Well, absolutely. It absolutely gives him an advantage, but not only in the weight room and with teammates and things. Like, if you want to play big Division I baseball, you're either going to have to be the most skilled guy as a freshman, or you're going to have to be developed physically. And we have one of those kids this year that came in developed very physically. And he's been a starter for us year round. So you're gonna jump over kids that are coming in that have never stepped foot in a weight room, but they're good baseball players, but they just don't have the tools to hit the ball out of the park, or whatever the case is when you get into some of these Division I fields.
Right.
The physicality that you bring in as a freshman is going to help you with the durability that you need to withstand all the stress that you're going to face. So there is no downside to having been in a weight room and trained for the previous 3 or 4 years. There's no downside.
And for guys who kind of want to do what you do, they're thinking about, getting into being a strength coach, a strength and conditioning assistant, or a coach on the collegiate level, on the NCAA level. Can you talk about like the conversations that you have between, how much communication is there between yourself and baseball coaches, and what are a majority of these discussions generally about? What do they expect of you from what you see, and how much interplay is there with you with the actual coaches?
Yeah, it's ongoing daily. There has to be communication. 10 and 15 years ago, there was the silo effect, and really the silo effect still exists today. It was terrible in pro baseball back then, where you've got your strength and conditioning side, your medical side, which is ATCs, physical therapists, that type.
Right.
You've got your skill coaches, and everybody wants to do what they want to do with no regard to what's happening to the athlete in any other area. And we have to understand, for holistic health and development for our athletes, all those pieces combined, your tactical, your technical, your physical, and your medical, psychological, all those pieces combine to make our athlete robust against all the stress that they face and develop them. Because if the weight room or the strength coach does whatever they want, and the skill coach does whatever they want, and they trash them on each side of their own respective development, you're not developing a better athlete. You're going to break somebody down. And so you have to have constant communication about how much you've done, how this athlete is feeling, what they're prepared for. It's an ongoing thing. And that's the one thing I would say for young strength coaches out there that are getting into the field is you need to be able to communicate very clearly with your coaching staff, but you also need to be present at practices. You need to be part of the skill work. See where you can help fit into that skill development, so that you know exactly how fatigued an athlete is and how tiring this swing program is with these heavy bats or whatever the case is. You need to be a part of that with your coaching staff to develop that trust.
So great answer. Actually, that was the holistic answer is the way to go. So please explain to these guys, when you do, over the course of your experience over the years of being a strength and conditioning coach, once in a while, you will get that coach who is, I don't want to say old school. I just want to say a little bit, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
And that circles down for you as somebody that working for a team. It circles down for me as dealing with coaches in the private sector that call me. And it actually cycles right down to the athletes who are going to play for these guys. When something, personality wise, how do you deal with these guys when things are kind of like bottlenecking between the two of you? When do you know when to back off? When do you know to push your issue? And how do you get the most out of that coach? And how do you get the most buy-in out of a coach who initially looks like he's just putting walls up?
Yeah, it's really about, the first thing I say is you got to build relationships, because once you've built a relationship, then you can have some of that open communication, and that's very, very tough in the early going. The second thing, though, is constantly educating your coaching staff. And yes, you have to start out, I don't know how to put it, but you have to start out somewhat easy and in their wheelhouse, so to speak, and see how you can help them develop. One of the things I was told by a very, very big time coach was, don't ever use the word change. Don't say, hey, we need to change this. The hitting program, you guys are doing way too much on the field with BP. We got to change how we're doing this. It's not that. You need to go at it as, we are in this together. Let me help you create something better, or let us be together to help each other create something better for our athletes. Don't ever attack somebody with the word change, because they're going to be very resistant. And that's how these old school baseball coaches often see it, is you're coming in here trying to change what I've been very, very successful at. So don't use the word change, but communicate and educate. And then the more science you can, I shouldn't say science, the more data you have to back it up as you build that relationship, and you can show them, hey, this kid is running slower on a daily basis when we practice longer because he's fatigued. This is showing us this on our GPS.
Right.
I've seen things like that work before with coaches. I just talked to a coach yesterday that said something along the lines of a GPS system, and he went in there and said, hey, look what happens when we practice really, really long. This is where our swing velocities go, or whatever, towards the end of practice. And the coach was like, well, that doesn't look right. I don't want to do that. And he actually got them to understand that we need to start practicing longer, maybe more intense, but shorter practices are much more beneficial for the athletes right now.
And throwing up that red flag like you did, that kind of wakes a guy up. That can bring a guy around to be like, hey, you know what? This Zach guy's all right, man. I think, he's really looking out. Yeah, he's going to, because the bottom line is, right, these guys want to win, right?
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. So
Yeah.
you're not going to win with a guy who's just playing under fatigue constantly. So if you can bring it up that way, instead of like maybe, but what you're saying is don't put a guy in a corner like a cornered cat. You know what I mean? Because they're going to
Yeah.
lash back out. Let them know, like, hey man, we're really,
You,
yeah.
you,
I'm trying to express that because I'm trying to let kids know that guys, at young athletes, when they get to college, I know you've been the shit in your town, but when you get to school, that attitude is going to put up walls around you, and you need to not confront people, and you need to, build relationships, like you said.
yeah. And what we call it, honestly, is inception. It's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
trying to plant the idea in the other person's head and let them run with it and think it's their idea. And oftentimes that's how we get a good point across.
Awesome. We have a lot of college guys that train with us during the summer. What are your thoughts on playing versus training for college guys? And what are your thoughts on doing both?
Yeah. So in my younger days, I was totally against athletes playing in the summer. I wanted them to stay in, develop. We got to get stronger, faster, all these things. Now we have a system where if a guy plays a bunch, if he's a starter, everyday starter, for the most part, those guys will stay in house. If they haven't played though, the reality is they need to play. If they weren't an everyday starter for us during the season, we don't practice that much. It's all games. We practice 2 times a week. Those practices are often very, very light because you're in the middle of a 4 or 5 game stretch, and so they haven't had the chance to play. So the younger kids, we send them out and we want them to play because at the end of the day, it's about skill development. I would love to be selfish. I'd love to be selfish and say, hey, everybody stay in and let's lift weights, and you can hit in the cages. But a lot of times we see kids come back after 8 or 12 weeks out in the summer, and they have elevated their game significantly. So it's
I
kind of a
agree. I agree 100%, man. I tell guys all the time, you know what? If you're going to come and train here and you didn't get a lot of innings, you may want to pick up a summer league where you can work
yeah,
your stuff on the mound. You don't have to go to the Cape, you know what I mean? And you're probably not going to the Cape. So why don't you find a local team here while you're here, getting an apartment or getting housing to train here all summer? Get on a team, you know what I mean? And work your stuff. And even my local guys, I'm like, they always say, trying to figure out if I should go, if I should go playing in Northwoods or should I go play here? Or like, I was like, listen, man, if you want to do that, you can do that. Now we have remote training. We can do that. Or if you want to actually come in, you're only a freshman. You didn't get that many innings, so you do have to play. Get on a local team so you can, you can be in here 5 days a week and you can still play, you
yeah.
know.
The thing with it though is that the kids, you still need those guys to be in the gym. They still need to be developing because so many of them say, well, I'm going to play summer ball. I probably won't do much, or I'll work out at the field or something quick. That's really not acceptable. If you want to be the best, you're going to have to develop while you're playing summer ball. So they still need to be in the weight room. They still need to be doing sprints and all those things that are going to help them.
And do you, when you give your guys a summer program to keep them working out, do you tell them it's my way or the highway, or is it dependent upon where they're training? Like if they're going to a facility, do you find out where they're going? Does this guy, and do you make the decision? Do you think this guy needs a program, or do you think, or is it just, I really want you guys to do this program?
So yeah, I'm fine with. I actually had 2 coaches reach out to me in the past a month or so in the Cape that will be training our guys. So I basically give them frameworks and say, I don't want this athlete doing such and such and such because he's had this previous injury, and so this is what I want you to focus on. I'll give them a little bit of a framework, but I actually prefer that the strength coach with the team or facility that they're going to, wherever they're at, handles it because I'm not there. And so they're going to have a better idea of how the athlete is what they're doing on the playing field. They're going to have a better they're going to have better ability to see how the athlete feels on a daily basis and where adjustments need made. So I really don't have a problem with my athletes training with somebody else in the off season because I know they have the best intentions at heart. And so when I do send out programs for the athletes that don't have a place to play, or I shouldn't say don't have a place to play, don't have a place to train or are training on their own, I generally give them a lot of options. So they have heavy days and light days, and they get a pick when they're going to do that during the week. Because again, I can't control all of their games, how they're feeling and such.
Right. You also train a bit in the private sector. So what are some of the challenges you experience when training athletes in D1 college settings as opposed to the private sector? What are some differences that you find refreshing when you get the off season and you can train in the private sector, or a little bit more difficult? What's the pros and cons?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that in the collegiate setting where I'm at is I have control over everything. I can control all variables, right? I can go to the coaching staff and say, this athlete's feeling terrible today, or his arm's feeling bad, he's sore, he didn't get sleep, whatever the case is. Let's back him up on his throwing program. Let's adjust practice. Let's do these things. So we have control of all variables at this level versus the high school athletes that come in for my camp. I have to continually communicate with them. Hey, if you're going to do a throwing program with us at some time, if you're going to, whatever the case is, you have to tell us what you have been doing previously. You have to tell us if you've been doing lessons, if you've been, whatever it is, you have to communicate with us what you're doing elsewhere, because I am the one that has to pull back, right?
I call it dealing with trying to hit a moving target. It's like everybody comes in and they've got a different story.
Yeah. And you find out 10 weeks into something that one of the athletes is doing pitching lessons with 2 different pitching coaches and trying to throw plyo balls with you for velocity development or whatever the case is. And 10 weeks in, he's complaining about his elbow hurt. Yeah. And you go and ask his dad, what's going on here? His elbow.
I'm laughing because this is my life.
Yeah, I can imagine. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, his elbow started hurting last night at pitching lessons. And I'm like, pitching lessons? I told you guys you couldn't do that stuff if you're going to be throwing with us plyos and things. So that's what it is you can't control anything. So you hope that you get enough information to be able to make the best decision possible.
Let's talk a second about your book, Movement Over Maxes, which I have to tell you, I just wrote a book on VBT, and I'm extremely jealous over that title. That is a great title. How did you come up with that title, and what was the thought process behind you writing your book?
So the book came out of high school coaches for 10 years, for a decade plus, asking me, what do I do with my kids? Send me a program. And I was like, well, I can't send you a program because, number one, they probably never lifted before.
Right.
And this was just something that I had done since I had been a GA at Missouri State. Was we took all of our athletes through about a 6 or 10 week introductory program, really is what it was at the time. We called it the foundation program, but it was a foundation of learning to lift in the weight room, how to squat, how to hinge, how to push, pull, and stabilize your trunk. And so I've always had the program. But I just got tired of coaches sending me emails saying, hey, send me a program for my high school kids. I've got a freshman class. I need a program. Well, my program is not going to work for your freshman kids. So that's where the necessity of the book came up. And I probably spent a year trying to figure out what I was going to call it. And I don't know how it came up. But one day when I was driving home, I know the exact spot on the highway. I talk in my phone and save notes. When I have ideas, I open the notes app and I just start recording while I'm driving. And I was like, yeah, we got to teach these kids how to move. It's more important than a max. It just came to me, movement over maxes. And
yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. It sums up, it sums up great training in 3 words. You know what I mean? It's really,
the title is probably better than the book itself. Yes.
Yeah. And I remember early on, I saw on social media that Mike Boyle, I think I even told you this. I saw Mike Boyle saying that he loved your book, and I'm like, oh boy, this guy just got the blessing from the Pope.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, he actually, so we had released it around Thanksgiving, Black Friday or something like that. And about 3 weeks later, I got a call or a voice message from Mike Boyle. And I was like, oh, this is the best day ever. And he ended up buying 30 copies for his staff. He's like, yeah, it's a Christmas present for my staff, my interns. I'm going to give it to everybody. And it was that was the peak of my career, honestly.
It's great. I remember the day I saw that. I said, okay, well, he's going to do well with that one.
Yeah.
To sum it all up, we're almost done here. To sum it all up, what's your general advice for high school athletes looking to be ready physically and mentally on day one coming into a D1 program?
Yes, you need to chase development year round. number one, not just in the off season. You need to chase it year round, because one of the biggest things we see with incoming recruits, I ask every recruit, what are you doing for your training? Do you train in season? And I would say 90% of them do not train in season anywhere. You're taking 3 steps up the mountain and 4 steps back down to start all that stuff over. As a high school athlete, you are not developed enough to hold on to the residual effects of training, of strength, of speed, of all these things, of all these qualities. And to play at the highest level, you need to have a step up on development from everybody else, because the best are doing it now. You go and look at Tennessee, the #1 program in the country right now. Their 3 starting pitchers, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, are all freshmen. They're freshmen. They are developed freshmen. So you can't come into a program having never touched a weight, never moved, never sprinted, never done any formal training. You will get left behind in a heartbeat.
And that in-season training is huge. I wrote a few blogs on it. One of them was called "Managing a Controlled Fall," which is like a term I heard Mike Reinold use. Whereas we take this athlete the whole off season, and a lot of guys think that you get them so much stronger and more mobile and just more powerful in all the way up until baseball season starts. And then for some reason they think they're just going to ride that out the entire spring, summer, into the fall again, and then they show up to you again, and their arm is falling off, and they lost weight in the summertime, and now we got to build them all the way back up in the off season again to get them like kind of where they were last year, instead of like trying to just maintain. You don't. I mean, a lot of guys even get stronger in the season, but I mean, if anything, if you can just maintain it so we can start where we left off, we'll create that stepwise pattern that goes up. So yeah, that in-season training, kudos. That's a big one.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you right now that our guys are strongest in season, because it's the most consistent period of time that we have during the entire year for training. Our guys are physically the strongest really right now as we finish school and have nothing going on but baseball. This is
and I think they're being athletic. They're being athletic at the same time, and I think that carries over into the weight room. You know, I don't think conditioning, like a lot of guys don't want, like, you know, they're almost afraid of conditioning baseball players. It's like you have to they're athletes, you know, they're not power lifters. You know what I mean?
We have to convince parents, especially that being in the weight room and developing during the in-season is not a harmful side effect.
And it's really not an option if you want to be great, honestly.
It's not an option if you want to play Division I baseball. If you want my opinion, it's not an option.
Yeah. So, hey man, it was unbelievable talking with you. Thanks for making time. I'm looking forward to presenting it at your thing. Can you please talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have the Baseball Performance Summit that comes out in late fall generally, which is 10 to 15 of the best, what I consider the best performance minds in baseball, and some of them are even out of baseball. We get some stars this year. Obviously, you're on it, and what it is, I should explain it a little deeper. It's a 60 to 75-minute presentation based around a specific topic. You're going to be on it this year. We've got Lee Taft. Mike Boyle is a part of it. We've got let's see who else. The On Base U, Dr. Rose.
Rose, yeah.
Dr. Rose is going to be on it. And I've got some big names in waiting that I'm trying to hear back from. But it's 10 to 15 presentations that are an hour or so long, and it's, to me, as good as you'll find.
Yeah, man. So listen, you could check Zach out at Zach Dechant, ZachDechant.com. I'm going to get it right. And his Twitter at Zach Dechant. And you can grab his book, Movement Over Maxes. I highly suggest it. And Zach, really good luck with, you know, your son. I can tell you that boys are a lot tougher when they're small, but when they start to travel in packs, they're kind of a lot easier. I have a girl too, so girls are just the best when they're little, and then they hit about 14 or 15. The guys kind of like, they don't really care about anything but just like messing around and, like, you know, playing sports and stuff. but the girls start to get all kinds of wild, weird stuff going on. So,
Yeah.
I always wanted a girl, and I was like, this is why I want a girl. They're really, really easy and in the early on. And I watched the boys running around like, like madmen when they're little. Like you spend half your time. I remember, I couldn't wait till my kid got out of diapers, but then all of a sudden, dude, it's like, boom, you're chasing
Yeah.
these dudes all over the place.
Yeah.
But I'm
Mine
glad.
just started crawling recently, and so it's like
Yeah.
it's just all over the house. You got to chase him everywhere.
But wait till he starts walking, dude. Then you're
I
really,
know.
you're gonna have to
He's
get put
coming.
on, you're gonna have to put on roller skates. Anyway, we're here with Zach Dechant, and I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, and see you on the next Behind the Seams podcast.